Hey everybody, welcome to the video. Let's go over the 9-game MLB DFS slate for today on Draftkings. But before we continue, as always, if you guys could just leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, you might as well hit that subscribe button. I'm here all season long trying to help you guys become better MLB DFS players, and I cover other sports as well, including the NFL, NASCAR, which they are having their first playoff race of the season. And if you've never played NASCAR DFS before, I really do think it's the most enjoyable DFS sport. The swings in NASCAR DFS are just super exciting, and I really do enjoy it. So I'll be going live at 4 p.m. Eastern today. If you want to come in, check it out, and ask me all the questions you want, I will probably answer them. And I have my preview video that I posted on Thursday if you want to get a more in-depth look into the race this weekend. And like I said, NFL is coming up very soon, so I'll be pumping out content for that as well. So it's going to be very busy, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure you guys are as well. But yeah, if you're going to keep coming back to the channel each and every single day or each and every single week, you might as well hit that subscribe button and turn the notification bell so you don't miss out whenever I post new content. And if you don't follow me on social media, I'm at ChrisPennell16 over on Twitter, CPen16 over on IG. And if you miss more content over on Patreon, always much appreciated. Got 300 plus people there. You can hop into the Discord chat, bug me all day if you want, ask me questions, come in, hang out. Always a good time in there. And just get access to all the extra content that I put out each and every single day, including the cheat sheets, the top stacks, and all that good stuff. It's all down there in the link in the description below if you're interested. If not, hey, that's fine. Let's just dive into today's slate. So I'm liking this slate, and I also really like the pitchers. We have really two good elite options here in Shane Bieber and Jacob deGrom. We also have a semi-elite option here in Tyler Glasnow. He's got ace-level stuff. He just can be a little bit more shaky. He typically doesn't go too deep into games, but still he's got elite talent. And then Masahiro Tanaka, 7,600, not as good as the other guys that are listed above, but he's still a very solid pitcher, and he's also in a pretty nice price tag and a pretty good matchup, so I think he is viable as well if we need some salary relief. And when it comes to the dumpster diving options at pitcher today, I just don't really see anyone that's too viable. I'm not playing Matt Harvey, Andrew Triggs, Wojciechowski, not playing Casey Mize or Josh Tomlin, so probably as low as I'm willing to go is Tanaka for the most part, but I think there's enough value on the slate to be able to fit a high-end pitcher with one of these guys like Tyler Glasnow and Tanaka, paired with a guy like Bieber today. So we'll start up top with the Biebs at 11,000, and he is just pretty much cemented himself as the best pitcher in baseball so far this season. There's no reason to believe that that trend's not going to continue. He has just been so dominant. If we're looking at his game log, his worst game of the season is 19 points. Like, that's pretty good for that being your floor so far this year. But looking at the game log, 28, 29, 35, 39, 19, 29, 46, and 41. He should win the AL Cy Young Award, and honestly, you could make a case for him being the MVP of the season for the AL. I mean, he's just been so good. And if you're looking at his numbers so far this year, a 1.86 xFIP, a 42% K rate, getting a lot of ground balls, only giving up 0.68 home runs per 9 innings. He's elite versus lefties. He's elite versus righties. I see no reason why he can't dominate in this matchup. Now, the Brewers, yeah, maybe a guy like Christian Yelich could give him some issues, but if you're looking at the overall splits versus, for the Brewers versus righties this season, they're striking out at near 28% clip, only a 68 WRC plus, a 275 WOBA, and a batting average below 200. Shane Bieber should be able to mow down this lineup, and he is the clear SP1 on this slate, in my opinion. Jacob deGrom's right there with him. He's also one of the best pitchers in baseball, but I like the matchup here a bit more for Shane Bieber, and he's just been so excellent this year. And only 2.83 runs for the Brewers in Vegas, 67% chance for the win, and 7 strikeouts for Bieber. So yeah, he's a very good play, and he's going to be the thumbnail on this video, which you guys already knew because you clicked on the video. Then dropping down to I'd say Shane Bieber's the 1A, then Jacob deGrom's like the 1B for the most part, although I feel like Shane Bieber deserves to be in his own tier this season. But deGrom's also been fantastic. He's got a 1.76 ERA paired with a 2.4 xFIP, 36% K rate. I mean, elite numbers all around. Like, his numbers are very good, but compared to Bieber, they're just not as good because he has just been insanely good this year. But Vegas likes him as well. Only 3 runs against him, 60% chance for the win, and 7.5 strikeouts. And if we're looking at the splits for the Phillies versus righties, this is why I would prefer Shane Bieber today, because the Phillies aren't a bad team. They're only striking out 19% of the time to right-handed pitching, a 173 team ISO, a 266 batting average, and a 109 WRC plus. So the matchup's not great for deGrom, but look, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball, and the same can be said for the Phillies, where it's not a good matchup for the Phillies, as it's not really a great matchup for deGrom. They tend to usually give the advantage to the pitchers for the most part, because they kind of control the game, the ball's in their hand, and he's just got such good stuff. I mean, if you're looking at his game log this year, 24, 39, 25, 17, 29, 15, and 26. And something that's also pretty funny with DeGrom is that his past 4 starts have been versus the same team in Miami, which is also a very weak opponent. So you kind of put that a little bit into his stock a little bit, but he's still an elite level talent. He's just been so good. So definitely like DeGrom, but if you had to pick between the two, I will side with Shane Bieber. Then we'll drop it down to the SP2 options. Tyler Glasnow, 8,700. He draws that elite matchup versus Miami, and he's got good stuff. I mean, he's been a little shaky this year. The walks have been up a little bit, and he's giving up some hard contact for sure. But man, his past 3 starts have been fantastic. 33 points, 38 points, then 21. He's got 8 strikeouts, 13 and 19, or not 19 strikeouts, 9 strikeouts. And we saw his pitch count go up to 96 2 starts ago versus Baltimore. So I really don't think pitch count's going to be too much of an issue. I think realistically, he's probably going to be around 85 to 90 for the most part. But if he's pitching really well, we could see that stretch to close to 100. But love the matchup here versus Miami. We're also in a pitchers-friendly park. And if you're looking at his splits this year, a 40% strikeout rate. I think I already went over this, but the hard contact's up and the walks are up, and the home run rate of 1.32 home runs per 9 innings is a little up there, but it's still nothing I'm going to be too scared about, especially versus Miami. If you're looking at their overall splits this season, they've been pretty trashy. 25% K rate, 136 ISO, 88 WRC plus, and a WOBA less than 300. They've been worse versus lefties compared to the righties, but look, they have 0 power, 0.118 ISO versus right-handed pitching this season, and I think Glasnow is an elite option at SP2 today. I mean, you could play him at SP1 if you want to build your bats up a little bit and use Tanaka at SP2. But I'm really liking the Bieber Glasnow combination. Then we're going to have to find some value in our bats today, but there's always plenty of value to be had pretty much every single DK slate, it seems like. So shouldn't be much of an issue here, and I think we can just lock in our close to 30 points for Shane Bieber and hopefully 20 plus points from Tyler Glasnow, and just kind of hope the rest of your bats fill into place. Then Tanaka, 7,600. He's more of a wild card for me here. The Orioles have had some decent games this season, and they actually got the Cole late on. I mean, the Cole was just fantastic in his last night. I think he had 8 strikeouts through his the first 9 batters, if I remember correctly. He was just doing so good. And then at the very end, he gave up 5 runs, but only 1 was earned because he gave up a homer. Then I forget who it was, but there was a fielding error which could have ended the inning. So all those runs were unearned, so it didn't hurt Garrett Cole. But the Orioles they've had some decent pop in their lineup so far this season. And Tanaka's not what I would call an elite level pitcher, and he does give up a 40% fly ball rate and 1.35 home runs per 9 innings. And this is a very hitter friendly park, so I don't think Tanaka is it's an absolute lock here, but he's been fine his past 2 starts. He scored 24 points when he struck out 7, then 17 points versus Atlanta. He has not faced the Orioles yet this season, but I think we can probably get 15 plus points here out of Tanaka, and hopefully the Yankees actually hit the ball tonight and get him the win. So I think he's a fine option here. Only 4.5 strikeouts in Vegas, but 68% chance for the win, 3.7 runs against him, and if you're looking at his numbers on the season, a 23% K rate and only a 4% walk rate. He's always had some strong control, but I think he's okay here. He doesn't have the upside that guys like Glasnow, DeGrom, and Bieber have, but he's also not priced like that as well. And we'll move on to the bats at this point. These are really the only 4 guys that really caught my eye for the most part. So we'll move on to the bats, and we'll start up top here at catcher with Yasmani Grandal at 4,900. Matt Harvey is not a good pitcher in the slightest, so feel free to use all the White Sox here for the most part. I do not have their entire lineup listed, but just know anybody in a White Sox uniform tonight is probably going to be a pretty good play. No team total out yet for the White Sox, but I'd have to imagine it's going to be one of the higher ones on the slate because Matt Harvey, just not a good pitcher these days. If you're looking at his splits versus lefties and versus righties, he's pretty bad versus both. If you're looking at his numbers this season, he's giving up a near 800 WOBA to righties and over 200 ISO. He's getting crushed by righties this season, but overall he's always been a little bit worse versus lefties. But either side of the plate is in play here. Just don't discriminate in this lineup. Use anybody you can. Again, don't have everybody listed on Tim Anderson listed here or Encarnacion or Jimenez just because they're a bit expensive. But if you're full stack on the White Sox, go for it. The only problem is I kind of plan on spending up at pitcher today, so won't be as easy to fit those guys in. But Grandal, he's good versus lefties. He's good versus righties. Looking at his splits this season, he's been a bit better versus the lefties, but overall, I'll give Grandal the advantage over Matt Harvey any single day. Gary Sanchez, 4,300. He's been pretty strong versus lefties this season when it comes to the righties. Hasn't been that great, but I like the entire Yankees lineup here versus Wojciechowski. I know they did absolutely nothing last night. I think their only runs were a Clint Frazier solo shot, if I remember correctly. I think that was it. But Wachowski's not a very good pitcher. I prefer lefties versus him because he can be a little bit tough on the righties. But, I mean, so far this year, he's kind of been neutral for the most part. I mean, 366 WOBA to lefties and a 370 WOBA to righties. On the strikeout rate, 22% compared to 20%. So feel free to just pretty much use anybody here in the Yankees. Wachowski is a guy that gives up a lot of fly balls. We're in a hitter-friendly park. You get the guaranteed ninth inning at-bats. And I believe it was Gary Sanchez and Gleyber Torres that just absolutely destroyed Orioles pitching last year, and especially in Camden Yards. So Gary Sanchez, he's fine, only 4,300. He's a nice addition to Yankee stacks or just as a one-off. Kevin Plawecki at 3,100. Not sure if he'll be in the lineup or if it's Christian Vasquez, but either way, whoever it is, I think it's a fine play. I'm hoping it's Plawecki because he's been hitting the ball very well this season, and he's pretty cheap. So it'd be a nice addition just to throw in as a cheap one-off in my lineup or just as part of the Red Sox stack. And I think he would probably be hitting near the middle of the order as well. But I like all the Red Sox here. Now, as you can see in my spreadsheet, it says that Merriweather is going to be the main pitcher here. Now, he's going to be the opener, but Robbie Ray, I would assume, is going to come in long relief. That's what happened last time in his first start for the Blue Jays, and I would assume that's what's going to happen once again. So, I do the lefties here I like versus Merriweather, but you can also, I don't really think you need to fade them with Robbie Ray coming in because Robbie Ray's really not been that good so far this year, so I think everyone on Boston is certainly playable. No team total for this, but I'd have to imagine this game's going to have one of the higher over-unders in the slate because, look, Robbie Ray's just not been that great this year, and then who's pitching for Boston? Andrew Trigg. So, yeah, the Toronto Blue Jays are going to be one of the top stacks on the slate for me. I have pretty much the entire lineup listed here, so just keep that in mind. I definitely like this game stack, and I prefer the Blue Jays, but I don't think you should really forget about the Red Sox here. And if you're looking at Plawecki splits this season, over a 400 batting average to lefties this year. Not a lot of power, but he's getting on base and he's got some really strong numbers, only a 6% K rate, so definitely don't mind Plawecki. Dropping down to first base, I have three options here. You have Jose Abreu, 5,200 for spending all the way up. Matt Harvey sucks versus lefties and versus righties, and Abreu is one of the best bats in the league, especially so far this season. So certainly can use Abreu here if you're looking at splits versus righties this year. 320 batting average, 350 ISO, 174 WRC plus, just elite numbers, and Abreu is fine, especially in White Sox stacks. Luke Voit, 4,900 again. I know the Yankees did not do anything last night, but I'm willing to go right back to the well here. They have a team total of 5.71, which might end up being the highest on the slate. Again, maybe the Blue Jays surpass that, and maybe potentially the White Sox, which do not have a team total out yet. So I could see a couple of teams maybe surpassing that, but definitely one of the top stacks tonight. And if you're looking at Voigt's splits this season, he's been great versus lefties, and he's been great versus righties too, with a 330 batting average, a 355 ISO. So don't mind him if you're stacking the Yankees, but that price tag doesn't make him a very easy fit. Rowdy Tellez, 3,800, probably going to be the chalky cash game option because we're spending up a pitcher, but you're going to have to get a cheap first baseman. And there's a couple of other guys I could have put here, like Edwin Encarnacion or Ryan McBroom, who's also pretty cheap. But I like Tellez, 3,800. I think he's a pretty easy plug and play for the most part. If you're looking at his numbers versus righties this season, over a 300 ISO, low batting average, but he's not really striking out a ton. And look, Andrew Triggs is not a pitcher I'm going to be scared about. I mean, Boston, whoever Boston puts on the mound for the most part tends to get crushed each and every single night. So feel free to use all the Blue Jays you want in your lineups today. Then dropping down to, well, I guess not dropping down to third base, second base. He's also eligible on third base as well. But DJ LeMahieu, 5,500. He's been great this season. He's always been one of the better elite contact hitters in the entire league. He actually has a 0% K rate to lefties this season and only a 10% to the righties. Big high contact guy. He's got a 412 batting average to right-handed pitching this season, a 176 WRC plus, and a 431 WOBA. Not a ton of power, but look, I like all the Yankees here. He's just very expensive, so it's probably not going to be easy to fit him in cash games. But if you're stacking the Yankees and you got the money for it, I don't mind using LeMahieu. Kevon Biggio, 5,200, a bit pricey here, but again, I like all the Blue Jays here versus Andrew Triggs and whoever else is going to follow him. Boston's pitching staff has just been horrendous this season, and teams tend to go off versus Boston. If you're looking at Biggio's splits versus righties this year, 253 ISO, 41% fly ball rate, 15% K rate, 119 WRC plus, 500 slugging. Yeah, he's a fine option. Then Jonathan Villar, 4,100. He led off last night because Kevon Biggio did not make the lineup. So since Biggio, I would assume, is going to be back in it, I would not expect Villar to lead off again. So he's going to hit in near the bottom of the order, but he's just a fine addition as a cheap option to your Blue Jays stacks. Then dropping out of third base, so Rafael Devers, 5,200. So I like him here versus Merriweather, but when Robbie Ray comes in, that's going to pose a little bit of an issue here because Devers is obviously much better versus righties than he is versus lefties, but overall, I do like this game stack, and I think Devers might end up being a little bit contrarian there. If you got the money for him, I think he's fine, but you never know. He could get a nice 2-run homer in the first inning versus Merriweather here. He's got elite numbers versus righties, so don't mind Devers in tournaments. Moncada, 5,100, like all the White Sox here versus Matt Harvey, and look, he sucks versus either side of the plate, and Moncada always been a better hitter versus right-handed pitching, so I think he's a fine option on White Sox stacks, but again, very expensive, and I'm not sure how easy it's going to be to fit him in. Travis Shaw, 4,200. I think he batted 5th last night, which if he's going to bat around 5th or 6th, I would take that at 4,200. Like all the Blue Jays here, and always had better splits versus right-handed pitching. So far this season, it's not been pretty, but he did well last night, and I just like all the Blue Jays for the most part. And he's pretty affordable at 4,200. Josh McDonaldson, 3,900. Did I say McDonaldson? I think I did say McDonaldson. Josh Donaldson at 3,900. I can't believe I said that. Anyway, looking at his numbers this season, it's not a big sample size because he's barely played, but I could see him ending up being pretty popular at that price tag just because we know the talent, we know the upside with Donaldson, and he's just a little bit too cheap here. And the Twins do have a team total at 5.51, which is actually higher than I thought it was going to be versus Casey Mize. You know, he's a young pitcher. Obviously, he was the number 1 pick in the draft, so he's got plenty of potential, but again, young pitcher, definitely going to be prone to mistakes and hasn't been bulletproof so far this year. So Donaldson, he's a fine option. And last year, he actually had better splits versus right-handed pitching. Then dropping down to shortstop, you have Xander Bogaerts at 5,100. So I prefer him versus lefties, but I'm pretty sure Robbie Ray is going to be coming in after Merriweather here. And if that's the case, look, you get a pretty good option there in Xander Bogaerts. And Robbie Ray's been kind of horrendous so far this year. He's just walking guys at an insane rate, and he's going to have a lot of power to both sides of the plate. Obviously, he has that strikeout rate, which can be a little bit concerning. But if he's not on his game, I mean, guys just pretty much barrel him up for the most part if he can't miss bats. So definitely don't mind Xander Bogaerts in tournaments, but again, super expensive, and I just can't see myself really wanting to pay $5,100 for Bogaerts in cash games. Jorge Polanco, 4,700, should be hitting to the top of the order here, potentially leading off versus the righty Casey Mize. We'll see. But I've always liked him better versus right-handed pitching. And again, Casey Mize is going to be prone to mistakes. He's a new young pitcher. And Polanco, very solid hitter. So I don't mind him on the twin stacks. But I'm not really sure if I'll get there in cash games. Because again, about 5K is a pretty tough price to pay for Polanco. Gleyber Torres, I feel like I'd probably end up going here for cash games. Or maybe a guy like Munoz here. I think I said his name right. But Torres, I think, what did he do? I think he was one of the only guys that did something last night for the Yankees. Him and Clint Frazier, I think, were like one of the few guys that did something. I know he got a walk and hit a double. I can't remember if anything else happened after that, but I think he's fine. He recently returned from the IL last night, man, 4,500, like all the Yankees here, and I think he's a fine option. Wojciechowski's not very good versus either side of the plate. Then Munoz, I believe that's how you say his name, 2,700, so barely any of a sample size here, but he's done well in a very small sample size. Did absolutely nothing last night, but at only 2,700, I don't mind him. I do like this game stack, and we're going to need some cheap value on this slate if we're going to be spending up a bit at pitching. So Munoz, I think he is a fine option here. Again, I can't really look at these splits because he's barely played, so can't put too much stock into it. Then dropping down to the outfield, we have Juan Soto, 5,700, one of the best hitters in the league versus right-handed pitching. He's great versus left-handed pitching as well. I mean, he's one of the best bats in the entire league, so I don't really care who he's going up against for the most part. But Josh Tomlin, not a very good pitcher. I remember him from his Indians days where he had a good stretch, but man, he turned into a batting practice pitcher. I mean, the guy just absolutely awful. But Soto, I mean, he crushes right-handed pitching with a 416 on base percentage, 203 WRC plus, 364 batting average. I mean, elite numbers all around. Josh Tomlin, if you're looking at his splits, over a 200 ISO given up to left-handed bats, which it's going to appear red, but it's barely comparing it to anybody because we don't have many splits here. So trust me, over a 200 ISO given up is pretty rough. So definitely like the upside for Juan Soto, but he's going to be a tough fit at that price tag. JD Martinez, this is assuming that Robbie Ray's coming in, because anytime JD Martinez is going up against a lefty, he's going to be one of the top home run threats on the slate. His numbers last year versus lefties were insane. Absolutely insane. This year a little bit, it's dipped down a little bit just because the Red Sox have been kind of horrendous for the most part, and JD Martinez hasn't been fantastic, but anytime he faces lefty, I'll always have interest in JD. Teoscar Hernandez, 5K. He is very, very expensive. I was surprised when I saw his price tag. I was hoping he's going to be in the mid 4K range. Unfortunately, not the case, but he's been very good this year. He homered last night. I like all the Blue Jays. He's been good versus lefties, good versus righties. Prefer him better versus lefties, but either side of the plate here is in play for me. For Toronto, Randall Grichuk, 4,300. He's going to be easier to fit in than Teoscar. And he too's been good versus either side of the plate this season. A 421 ISO to lefties and a 511 WOBA to lefties. Numbers do drop off a little bit, but a 224 ISO to righties and a 329 WOBA is not awful, but obviously not as good as they are versus lefties. But like I like all the Blue Jays, and Grichuk is fairly priced for the most part. Jesse Winker, 4,200. I think the Reds lefties are all stackable here, but I didn't want to list the entire slate, so I kind of left them off for the most part. But Jesse Winker, he's actually been one of the better bats in the league versus right-handed pitching this season. An 800 slugging, a 367 batting average, 433 ISO, over a 500 WOBA. So I think Winker's fine. Or I'm sorry, I was looking at Clint Frazier's stats at the very bottom there. It was a 700 slugging, 2 righties, 471 WOBA, and a 378 ISO. 197 WRC plus. They've both been great versus righties, but Jesse Winker, I think he's a fine option here. Chad Cole's always been someone that struggles with lefties more so than righties. There's going to be quite a few lefties in this Reds lineup, so I do think they profile out pretty well here. And you can also look at Tucker Barnhart at catcher too. I forget what his price tag is, but I'm pretty sure he's pretty cheap. And then Clint Frazier, 3,900. I kind of just went over his stats. He's been great versus righties, so if you're just stacked up the Yankees, I think he's fine. He batted cleanup last night, and he's been really good versus righties and like the entire Yankee stack. Aaron Hicks, 3,600. He led off last night. We'll see if that happens again. I don't think it's going to. But also DJ didn't make the lineup, so I guess that had something more so to do with it than anything. But Hicks, I've always liked him better versus righties, and I like the lefties here versus Wojciechowski. So Hicks is a fine option at only 3,600 for one of the top stacks on the night. Gregory Polanco, 2,700. This is a cheap lefty here versus TJ Antone. We don't have many splits on him this season. If we take a look at some of the WOBA numbers, he's got a 290 WOBA, 2 lefties, and a 181 WOBA, 2 righties. And a 40% K rate to righties and a 27% K rate to lefties. It's a smaller sample size, but I'm still going to prefer the lefties here. And Polanco's cheap and decent versus righties, so he is fine. The Nomar Mazara, 2,400. He's been pretty bad this season, but it's very cheap lefty power versus Matt Harvey. We know Mazara's got some power. When he was in Texas last year, I will never forget him hitting like a 503-foot bomb. It was beautiful. I remember playing him that night, and I played him a lot on the Rangers because that ballpark was a hitter's paradise in the summer when it was hot. I mean, that ball just carried. I don't think I played him once this year, which I guess is good because he's not been that great. But just very cheap lefty power here versus Matt Harvey, who's just been awful versus either side of the plate. But that's going to be it for the video, guys. I hope it was helpful. If it was, remember to leave a like. It really helps me out, and I really do appreciate that. You can follow me on the social medias, and if you want to support me on Patreon, feel free to do so. Links in the description below. But I hope you guys enjoy your Sunday, and if you want to check out the NASCAR DFS content, it's there. And come in, check out the live stream at 4 p.m. Eastern, more than likely. So that'll be it. Hope you guys enjoy Sunday, and have a great day.